Hey everyone, let's dive right into this completely covered visual explainer of Mark Twain's absolute classic, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. We're not just looking at this as an old dusty book today. No, we're going to break down the highly cinematic quality of this story. I mean, from sun-drenched fences to pitch-black caves, the imagery Twain creates is literally a movie script just waiting to happen. It maps out a breathtaking journey from childhood innocence straight into real-world danger. So let's get into it. Just imagine for a second the sheer terror of this. You're a kid. You're hiding out in a midnight graveyard, just trying to cure some warts, as kids do. And suddenly you hear the heavy, crunching footsteps of actual grave robbers coming your way. It is a pitch-perfect suspense scene. Our heroes, Tom and Huck, are huddled behind these three massive elms in the pitch dark. The wind is moaning, an owl is hooting in the distance, and then swinging lanterns cut right through the gloom. It's the ultimate inciting incident, throwing these innocent boys straight into a high-stakes thriller.
But okay, before we get to that terrifying catalyst, we really have to set the scene. We need to look at the tranquil, sun-drenched riverside village of St. Petersburg. This is a place that is practically begging for boyish escapades. It's this sleepy little town where your biggest concern is usually just trying to sit still in Sunday school. And setting this scene is absolutely crucial. Because to truly understand the sheer panic of that graveyard, we first need to understand the absolute safety and the idyllic boredom of Tom's everyday life.
And Tom's baseline, it is a masterclass in imagination. He literally turns tedious, back-breaking chores into a lucrative whitewashing business. He turns his daily life into epic fantasies. He figures out this great law of human action. If you want to make a boy covet a thing, you just have to make it super difficult to attain. Brilliant, right? So he plays hooky, he's out in the woods pretending to be Robin Hood, and he orchestrates these incredibly complex plans just to win the admiration of the new girl, Becky Thatcher. It's a beautifully structured, highly cinematic look at pure, unfiltered childhood imagination. But then, the story violently shifts gears. Twain just rips the boys from those sunny playtimes and throws them into the incredibly dark reality of witnessing a brutal murder. Tom and Huck went to that graveyard expecting to see devils coming for a wicked man's soul. Instead, they witnessed Dr. Robinson being struck down by the vengeful Injun Joe. The cinematic lighting shifts in an instant from those bright, carefree summer days straight into moonlit terror. We're then thrown right into this incredibly chilling dialogue. The completely innocent but heavily intoxicated Muff Potter is gaslighted into believing he killed the town doctor. See, Potter was knocked out cold during the scuffle, and when he finally comes to, Injun Joe has actually placed the bloody knife right into his hand. Potter's confusion and his absolute desperation, they are palpable. It's such a stark, horrifying contrast to the carefree games Tom was playing just a few hours before. And then, the terrifying Injun Joe coldly seals Potter's fate. He uses these deeply manipulative words to convince Potter to run away, effectively framing him for the entire crime. And all the while, Tom and Huck are just watching from the shadows, completely paralyzed by fear. The boys are trapped. They're silently witnessing this massive injustice that completely shatters their entire understanding of how the world actually works.
So, believing Injun Joe is going to kill them next if they squeak, the terrified boys decide they need to make a pact. They scrawl this dramatic blood oath on a clean pine shingle. They use a fragment of red keel to write it out, swearing to keep mum about the murder, wishing they may just drop down dead in their tracks if they ever tell a soul. It's such a brilliant visual, isn't it? It's this moment where childhood pretend play collides directly with severe adult trauma. The fallout from this builds incredibly fast. Overwhelmed by this gnawing secret and feeling completely unloved by his Aunt Polly, Tom decides to just run away. He, Huck, and Joe Harper escape on a raft over to Jackson's Island to live as pirates. And it is cinematic. We see them endure this raging thunderstorm that literally tears a huge sycamore tree to flinders. But the guilt creeps in. They actually feel bad about stealing some bacon. And then comes the ultimate twist. They sneak back into town, hide in the church gallery, and crash their very own funeral. It's a perfectly timed, dramatic return that leaves the whole town absolutely astounded. Now, back in the civilized world, Tom really starts to prove his growing maturity. When Becky Thatcher accidentally tears the schoolmaster's anatomy book, she is practically paralyzed with fear. But in this incredibly heroic, cinematic moment, just as the master is about to interrogate her, Tom springs to his feet. He shouts a confession and takes a merciless whipping in her place. And Twain notes that the pure adoration in Becky's eyes was pay enough for 100 floggings. However,
That guilt over innocent Muff Potter being framed, it finally boils over. Potter is on trial, he's facing the gallows, and literally the entire town is there. Which brings us to this highly cinematic, breathless moment in the courtroom. The defense calls a completely surprise witness. The silence in that room is absolutely deafening as Tom takes the stand, staring right at Injun Joe's iron face. Tom bravely breaks his blood oath. He tells the entire truth. The suspense is just building and building with every single question, right up until Tom reveals he was hiding behind those elm trees. And then, in a flash of incredible action, Injun Joe springs up, crashes right through a window, and escapes. Tom instantly becomes a local hero, gets his name in the village paper, the whole 9 yards. But his days are now completely haunted by the very real fear of this killer's revenge. So, to escape that lingering, suffocating anxiety of Injun Joe being out on the loose, the boys go right back to a classic boyhood distraction, digging for buried treasure. They decide they absolutely need to search under dead trees with one limb sticking out, or go exploring inside these abandoned, floorless, haunted houses completely covered in ragged cobwebs. They're actively seeking out spooky, cinematic thrills, almost as a way to distract themselves from their actual real-life terrors. Which perfectly sets up our climax. What exactly happens when their innocent search for a brass pot of gold puts them in the exact same room as a very real, very vengeful killer hiding his own stolen loot? Tom and Huck are upstairs exploring this haunted house when Injun Joe, who is disguised as a deaf and dumb Spaniard, walks right in with a companion. The boys are mere feet away from the man who wants them dead, just watching him through the floorboards. Talk about tension. Shortly after this, during a town picnic, the pacing slows way, way down to this claustrophobic crawl. Tom and Becky go exploring and get hopelessly lost inside McDougal's cave. And guys, this is visual storytelling at its absolute finest. They are wandering these endless pitch-black corridors. Their last candle burns down and goes out. When Tom shouts out for help, only this faint, hollow sound resembling mocking laughter echoes back down the aisles. While they're desperately searching for an exit, using a kite string as a guideline, by the way, Tom peers around a pitch-dark corner and stumbles upon his literal worst nightmare. By the faint light, he sees Injun Joe. The killer is hiding his stolen treasure right there in the exact same cave. Tom is absolutely paralyzed. He almost steps directly onto the sleeping murderer's hand before quietly, carefully slipping away back into the blackness. Miraculously, Tom and Becky do find a way out through this tiny hole miles down the river. The whole town celebrates. But then, 2 weeks later, Judge Thatcher unknowingly sets up a really grim finale. To prevent anyone else from ever getting lost again, he has the cave's entrance permanently sealed up with a door of triple-locked boiler iron. And upon hearing this, Tom turns white as a sheet, suddenly realizing that Injun Joe has just been entombed alive inside. So that brings us to the ultimate payoff. With Injun Joe dead, Tom and Huck secretly head back to the cave through their hidden exit. And they find it. Injun Joe's gold, $12,000 in total. Judge Thatcher and the widow Douglas take the money and invest it for them, securing for each boy a prodigious income, returning 6% interest. Now that's $1 a day, which was an absolute fortune back in those times. And this incredible fortune really highlights the final divergence of our two heroes. Tom? He proudly accepts his new wealth and all the adoration of the town, fitting neatly right into society. But Huck bravely bears his miseries of eating with a knife and fork for 3 weeks before completely fleeing the oppressive rules and the shackles of civilization. He goes right back to sleeping in an empty hogshead in his picturesque rags, valuing his wild, untamed freedom way more than a comfortable bed. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought straight from Mark Twain's own conclusion. He states that since this is strictly a history of a boy, it has to stop right here. The story could not go much further without becoming the history of a man. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? At what point does the untamed, imaginative spirit of boyhood end and the rigid, structured history of a man truly begin? Does finding the treasure mark the end of the adventure, or is it just the death of childhood? Thanks so much for exploring this masterpiece with me in this explainer. Keep asking those questions and keep looking for the cinematic stories hiding in the classics.